Tyson had spent over 2 decades on the force, earning respect as a no-nonsense, seasoned detective. His badge had once gleamed as a symbol of his dedication, but now it felt heavy against his chest, a daily reminder of the mistake that had tarnished his career. He couldn't help but replay the moment in his mind. The frantic call, the quick decision, and the anguished face of Tasha Carter as he slapped the cuffs on her wrists. It had been a humid summer afternoon, the kind that pressed sweat into every crevice of your uniform. The call came through his radio just after lunchtime. Suspect in a hit-and-run robbery. Black female, early 30s, driving a silver sedan, possibly armed. Tyson had been in the area and immediately felt the familiar pulse of adrenaline as he responded, speeding through the congested streets of Brookhaven. When he spotted the car parked outside a corner store, something in him clicked. The make, the model, even the minor dent on the passenger door matched the description. He didn't hesitate. Drawing his weapon, he approached, shouting commands to the woman who had just exited the store with a bag of groceries. She froze wide-eyed, her hands instinctively raised. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle and drop the bag." What is going on?" she stammered, looking genuinely terrified. Her voice shook, but Tyson's focus zeroed in on the situation. He had been trained to read signs. A twitch of the fingers, a darting glance, subtle movements signaling intent. But none of those were present. Still, the report and the adrenaline overruled his better judgment. "Turn around. Hands behind your head. Now." "Wait. You've got the wrong person. I said now." The tone of his voice startled both of them, and Tyson saw a flicker of tears forming in her eyes. It was only after he secured the handcuffs and escorted her to the squad car that she began to cry in earnest. The ride to the precinct was tense, Tasha's muffled sobs filling the car. Tyson glanced at her through the rearview mirror, and for a brief moment, doubt crept in. She didn't fit the profile of a hardened criminal. She looked more like a frightened mother. But he pushed the thoughts aside. Mistakes didn't come from hesitation, and second-guessing was a luxury he couldn't afford in the moment. At the station, Tasha's protests of innocence didn't stop. "I don't know what you think I did, but I'm telling you, I didn't do anything. Please, I was just buying groceries for my kids." Her words gnawed at him, but he buried the doubt beneath protocol. The questioning room felt claustrophobic as they processed her information, combed through records, and eventually realized their mistake. The real suspect was apprehended hours later, miles away, after crashing a different car. Tasha Carter had never been near the scene of the crime. The captain pulled Tyson aside after the alibi checked out. "You'd better hope she doesn't sue," Reed said coldly. "This is the kind of thing that's going to haunt you, and us." Now, 6 months later, Tyson sat at his desk in the precinct, surrounded by colleagues who still greeted him with respect, but now wore expressions of quiet judgment. Internal Affairs had closed their investigation, ruling the arrest an unfortunate mistake rather than malicious intent. But the court of public opinion had rendered its own verdict. The media latched onto the racial overtones of the incident, painting Tyson as an emblem of systemic bias. Across town, Tasha Carter had become an unwilling symbol of resilience and racial injustice. A community organizer before the incident, she now spoke at rallies and town halls, her voice both firm and weary as she recounted her experience. "I thought my life was over that day," she said at a recent event. "But I refuse to let one man's mistake define me or silence me." For Tyson, that sting was sharper than any disciplinary action. He'd reached out through official channels to apologize, but she'd refused to meet. Who could blame her? How could he ever atone for shattering her trust in a system she already viewed with skepticism? The precinct door creaked open, snapping Tyson out of his thoughts. Captain Reed strode in, his usual briskness tempered with something resembling caution. "Tyson, in my office. Now." The summons wasn't unusual, but the tone gave Tyson pause. He followed Reed into the office, the door clicking shut behind him. "What's going on?" Tyson asked. Reed sighed, running a hand over his salt and pepper beard. "Community Relations Initiative. The chief's trying to mend fences, and you've been volunteered to lead it." Tyson's stomach sank. "With all due respect, Cap, I don't think I'm the right person for this." "You don't have a choice," Reed said bluntly. "You screwed up, Tyson. You're lucky to still have a badge. This is your chance to prove you're more than your worst moment." The assignment was simple on paper. Engage with the community, build trust, and spearhead programs aimed at addressing concerns about racial profiling and police accountability. In practice, it felt like a minefield. Tyson spent sleepless nights drafting proposals, meeting with activists, and sitting through tense town halls where anger often flared into heated accusations. Each session felt like a gauntlet, but he faced it head-on, refusing to shy away from the criticism. Then came the day he dreaded, his first meeting with Tasha Carter. Her involvement had been a stipulation from community leaders, and while Tyson had hoped for a mediator, she insisted on one-on-one meeting. He arrived at her office, a modest but vibrant space filled with books, posters, and the unmistakable energy of grassroots activism. "Detective Tyson," she said, her voice steady but laced with a weariness he couldn't ignore. She gestured to a chair, and he sat across from her. "Ms. Carter," he began, but the words caught in his throat. How could he encapsulate the regret, the shame, the frustration at his own failure? She tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "Why are you here?" He paused, searching for honesty. "Because I need to make this right. I know I can't undo what happened, but I want to help fix what's broken." She crossed her arms, leaning back. "Fix it? Do you even understand what's broken?" The conversation was grueling. Tasha didn't mince words, laying bare her anger, her fear, and the lasting impact of that day. Tyson didn't argue or defend himself. He listened, absorbing every word like a penance he desperately needed. By the time the meeting ended, there was no forgiveness, but there was a tentative agreement to collaborate on community programs. Weeks turned into months as Tyson threw himself into the work. Together with Tasha, he organized workshops on implicit bias, forums for open dialogue, and mentorship programs for young people in the neighborhood. Progress was slow, and the tension between them never fully dissipated, but it began to evolve into something resembling mutual respect. But amidst this progress, a strange series of incidents began to unfold. One night after a community town hall, Tyson returned to his car and found a manila envelope resting on the driver's seat. He froze. He'd locked the vehicle before entering the building. He was certain of it. The envelope had no markings, no return address, just his name written in black marker. Inside was a single photograph. Tasha Carter standing in front of the corner store on the day of the incident, but something was off. Her shadow stretched unnaturally, twisting in a way that defied physics. Tyson's gut churned. The timestamp on the photo placed it 2 minutes before the call about the hit and run had been dispatched. How was this even possible? Over the following days, more envelopes appeared. Each contained a photo, each timestamped before the event. In one, Tyson spotted his own patrol car reflected in a window, parked outside the store, but the clock on his dashboard showed a time that didn't match his recollection. The photographs rattled him, their implications gnawing at his sanity. He avoided mentioning them to anyone, afraid of sounding paranoid or, worse, unhinged. Then, one evening, his phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Meet me where it began." His chest tightened. The corner store? He arrived just after sundown, parking a block away to avoid drawing attention. The store looked as ordinary as it had that fateful day, but the tension in the air was palpable. figure stepped out from the shadows. It was Tasha, her expression grim and determined. Before Tyson could speak, she held up her phone, showing him a series of the same photographs he'd been receiving. "I've been getting these too," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Do you know who's sending them?" Tyson asked, his throat dry. She shook her head. "No, but I think someone wants us to know that day wasn't random. That we were placed here." "Placed? By who?" "I don't know." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "But whoever it is, they've been watching us longer than we think." The streetlights flickered, plunging them momentarily into darkness. When they came back on, another envelope sat on the ground between them. This time, Tyson didn't hesitate. He ripped it open and pulled out a single note. "Time's running out. The truth isn't what you think." Their eyes met, both filled with a mixture of fear and determination. Whatever was happening, they were in it together now, and the mystery of that day was far from over. 3 months later, Tyson and Tasha had become an unlikely duo in unraveling the web of strange occurrences surrounding their shared experience. Cryptic leads led them to the archives of Brookhaven's police records, a long-abandoned warehouse, and eventually, the outskirts of the city, where an anonymous hacker revealed startling connections between Tyson's unit and clandestine surveillance experiments from decades past. The photographs, they learned, were part of a larger conspiracy to manipulate and control key moments in time to test behavioral responses. Tyson's arrest of Tasha wasn't a coincidence. It was orchestrated, a macabre experiment in human choice and consequence. The ultimate twist arrived when they found one final document, an envelope tucked inside an old typewriter in the hacker's basement. It revealed a name neither of them recognized: Elijah Cross. The document described Cross as the architect of the experiment and hinted at a chilling possibility: the ability to recreate alternate timelines through artificial interference. The note ended with a warning: "End this, or they'll keep rewriting you until nothing is left of the truth." Standing on the precipice of answers, Tyson and Tasha realized they weren't simply tied by the past. They were partners in saving the future. Together, they prepared to take on the forces behind the experiment, armed with newfound purpose and clarity. Justice had taken on a new meaning, no longer about absolution, but about reclaiming the narrative that had been stolen from them. As they exchanged a glance of mutual trust, they knew one thing for certain: they would stop at nothing to uncover the truth.